Hello, everyone, and welcome to Get More Clients. I'm your host, Lynn, and business owners and entrepreneurs hire me to ignite winning sales because most are chasing down clients, stuck in a chaotic sales cycle, and lacking client retention, conversions, and profits. The mission of this show is to educate, inspire, and motivate women around the world to build a robust sales strategy to get more clients. Because most can't get more clients and haven't a clue why. You will learn to transform thinking to the client's perspective and sales chaos with a robust strategic plan and to harvest the hidden profits. A woman marketer holding an iPad approaches a man in a grocery store. He's placing a product in his grocery cart. She asks, according to our brand strategy, you buy our brand to compensate for being a time-pressed working parent who misses the idealized family meals of your own childhood. Is that right? The man looks at the box in his cart, and he looks back at the woman and replies, it's a box of croutons. So last week, we went through client motivations and emotional appeal to quickly pique your client's interest and to secure their attention. And while I may not be great at giving you a little bit of a joke there, today we're going to be exploring how to define and segment your market. The process of grouping or segmenting potential clients based on different characteristics is important because it enables you to craft sales messages which resonate. It's all a part of that client thinking. And by the end of today's show, you will know how to define your market, identify the characteristics that are important to you, and segment your market with descriptors, experiences, and decision influencers. So let's go into an explanation of market segmentation. It is the process of dividing a market of potential clients into groups or segments based on different characteristics that are important to you. So not to Tom, Dick, or Harry, or should I say Thomasina and Harriet. And now that I've got completely segued into that. All right, so let's talk about that demographics. Are the 5 primary types of market segmentation. And most of you know about demographic. There's also behavioral, geographic, psychographic, and firmographic. So demographic segmentation is the simplest and by extension, the most widely used type of market segmentation. And most of you are familiar with this type of market segmentation. Demographics look at the background variables that are easily measured, such as gender, age, social class, and geography. Companies use it to create broad groupings of the population based on things such as age, sex, location, religion, family size, etc. And I know I keep harping on this, but the demographic information examples include what we've been talking about, age. So for some of you, you may have a very specific age that your product or service fits, right? A gender, such as Win-Win Women Network. Our shows are designed and built for women, right? And so it could be relationship status. Perhaps you are looking for people who are married or who are in a cohabitation relationship, whatever that happens to be. There's income, education, your work situation, and geography. What's interesting about geographic segmentation is it's separate, and yes, it's also a subset of demographic segmentation, but you can really dive deeper into geographic segmentation. And as the name implies, this is a type of market segmentation that groups people based on their physical location. And you may actually use this, and that may be important for you because the needs of your client differ from region to region, or your product or service specifically appeals to urban individuals or people who live in more rural areas. Those are classics, or who live in seaside communities or water-based communities where they have access to boats or fishing, etc. So as you can see, geographic can play a very specific role depending on your product or service. All right, let's talk about behavioral segmentation. This taps into the way people make decisions over time or in response to stimulus. So the idea, or stimuli, I should say, a stimulus that you receive, this type of segmentation is based on their actions and behaviors in the marketplace. So a really great example of this is that an organization that's going to market during the holiday season, and the deals available are different during the holiday season than they are for the rest of the year. So, I can think of one right off the top of my head, and that's that Apple puts their products on sale literally for a few days only every year, which is during Black Friday. And they have that it's, 2 or 3 days where to Cyber Monday that things are on sale. And otherwise, you don't ever find things that are on sale at Apple. Maybe sometimes they have some kind of special thing if you're buying a new computer for a college student. Yeah, but in general, that's something that's behavioral. And behavioral variables include whatever the benefits that are being sought, who the user is, what their status is, and the type of usage and the rate of that usage. So now let's talk about psychographic segmentation, because this looks at personality factors. And this is one of a very important piece of putting your market into segments, because psychographic, it really gets into how your client thinks, right? It's this type of segmentation is based on the lifestyle, interest, and activities of individuals that make up a client segment. And for many of you, this is very important that you tap into psychographic segmentation, because it's widely considered the most effective type of market segmentation, because it serves as a gateway to clients' thoughts. Woohoo, client thinking, you've got it. And I harp on that all the time, the client why. The client why is something that has to be core part of your sales strategy throughout your client journey, because your client drives the decisions. So you want to really tap into this, and you're more likely to make the right business decisions when you not only know who your clients are, but have a fair idea of how they think. So let's dive in a little bit more and talk about psychographic segmentation and how this formulates. And you'll see the relationship with the client why, because in psychographic segmentation, you're going to encounter questions like, what motivates my clients? Ooh, we just talked about that. What principles do my users have? What are their inherent beliefs? So with someone with type 2 diabetes, they could have an inherent belief about health and health issues, right? So those are that they've come to absorb. What drives users to make conscious and or unconscious decisions? So that's more of a B2B, but you can see how it obviously would apply B2C. So let's go into all the different sort of parts and parcels of psychographic segmentation. The first one is personality. Personality traits play a big role when it comes to choices of your target market. This is because clients are less likely to purchase items that don't align with their personalities and vice versa. So here I am in my green kimono, and so I'm more likely to purchase clothing that has some flair, right? Rather than a button-down suit apparel. So that's something where you can see how that can tie in. Common personality types in psychographic segmentation include creative, emotional, friendly, opinionated, introverted, or I should say introverted, and extroverted. All right, so let's talk about lifestyle. That's the next one, lifestyle. Clients also consider how your product fits into their lifestyle choices before making a purchasing decision. And so once again, this is something that you can think of, and from the apparel to something like the classic example that I keep using as a health coach who works with type 2 diabetes clients. How is that going to fit into their lifestyle, for healthy eating, to getting more movement, right? So that's something to really look into. How is that going to work? And one of the concerns that they're going to have is, how can I make food that my whole family would like? If you're looking at that type of demographic of a working mom with a family, and then making those meal plans so she can eat better, but she wants to make sure that her family enjoys the meals. Or in this case, maybe the dad's doing all the cooking and she needs to make sure that she influences him or her partner. Okay, so you get the gist. All right, let's talk about the next one, social status. This is a very important variable, and I don't want to just poo-poo this, because psychographic segmentation, literally every class has its product preferences. And this means what people eat, where, or they choose to associate with, and it largely affects the social class they belong to, whether directly or indirectly. And you can pick up on this in a number of different ways of how people perceive that. And the hack is to understand that while your product can be great, it may not necessarily appeal to all social classes. All right. Moving on, let's talk about activities, interests, and opinions. This is often abbreviated to AIO. These are the hobbies, interests, and opinions of your target audience, and they can help you understand their preferences and what appeals to them. This information comes in handy when it's time to map out your buyer personas, your ideal client avatar, which you're going to be working on in the next episode. Can't wait. But this helps you map out those buyer personas or ideal client avatars for your product or service. So that covers psychographic segmentation. And you can see there's a whole lot in that. So let's now talk about firmographic segmentation. So this is the process of analyzing and classifying B2B businesses, their audiences, and clients based on similar characteristics that matter to your business. So this tends obviously to be for that B2B world. And examples of firmographic segmentation include the industry, the annual revenue, the company size, the sales stage, performance, executive title, and location. So the way a firmographic grouping will look for one organization may be very different than the way it's going to look for another organization. So if you're working with a small businesses, so how do you classify that small business? Is it entrepreneurs and then businesses that have 100 team members or employees or less? I mean, is that the classification of the type of business that you're looking to connect with and how you can serve them? And so as you work that out, another organization could be selling large enterprise level SAS solutions. So they're going to be looking for really large companies, corporations that have actually a much longer sales cycle as well. So when you're putting that together, it really is dependent on your product or service, and then who is that ideal market for you. But this is very effective in the B2B world. So let's talk about market segmentation and why this is so important for you and you're mapping your sales strategy to get more clients. Now, first of all, you want to think this through, and you should be doing this before you ever have a client. It's an educated endeavor. You're gathering your facts and figures, and you're putting some analysis to it about who you want to serve and what kind of messages that they're going to respond to. And of course, that's my perfect segue back to thinking like a client. So what I would like us to do is go through our client why as it relates to market segmentation. And this is a 3-step exercise. So get out your pen and pencil, or your paper, your iPad or your notes, and start taking notes so that you can do this on your own. So step 1 is to define your market by identifying the different types of clients you have a specific product or service for. So let's go back and think about B2B factors, and they can include industry, organizational structure, stakeholders, and so on. So I'm going to give you an example of a B2B service. They have a service that they come in on site and they provide on-site facial tissue massage, deep tissue massage for workers who are in repetitive working situations or who sit at their desk all day or who drive a forklift, whatever that happens to be, so that they're always, that they have this muscular tension that builds up and it makes them just feel tired and achy. They start taking different over-the-counter medications and potentially get an injury. So there's a whole list of things. And in fact, this type of business, this example that I'm giving you, there's definitely going to be a correlation to workers' compensation, right? And having a workers' comp claim for a repetitive muscular injury. The other thing is, for HR, you're going to have these concerns. So and usually that comes under the category, and you're thinking of an organization under risk management. Okay. It could also be under the umbrella of operations because this is going to impact the productivity within a facility, right? And then it's also coming under the role of CFO because, heck, they don't want to have additional workers' comp claims that impacts their bottom line, right? From an HR perspective and hopefully from a humanistic perspective, nobody wants to see their employees have an injury, right? But from HR, they're going to be looking at how that's going to impact absenteeism. That in turn affects productivity. It in turn affects everyone else on the team, which comes back to operations and production, right? Whoa, a whole bunch of different people, right? So these are the different stakeholder roles. And then you can determine, well, where's the best entree to start a conversation? Well, there's one I didn't mention. What about environmental health and safety? Well, for larger companies, they have someone in that role. And that's a great place who brings all these different entities together in a way to present your solution, right? So when you go through this exercise, what you're doing is just what I did. So what kind of industries? Industries that have people who do the same type of task repetitively. So if you're looking at warehouses, people who are putting boxes and packaging them, running them down the line as it goes, or people who are driving the forklifts to move big pallets of merchandise, people who are picking and packing the stocking of the shelves. These are all, they're doing the same job day after day. So that's the type of industry that would be a good fit for this type of product or service. And then you can start to look at different types of industries. Now, within each of those industries, they're going to have a different reason as to why this makes sense for them, right? And what's going to be their pain points within that industry. The client thinking, that exercise that we always go through. So once again, that's a great B2B example. So now, as I rub my hands together, let's talk about a B2C factor. And we're going to use my favorite example of a health coach who helps with healthy eating, movement, and energy. And, that type of program could help everyone, right? It could help everyone. But when they focus on a specific demographic, perhaps they're looking at working women, who have type 2 diabetes. Now, all of a sudden, they've really targeted who that market is. And they put a number of different, both demographics and psychographics and behavioral pieces around who that person is, that segmentation that we just went through. So we've classified them demographically, they're a working woman, right? And then we've also done that with the psychographics is that they have a health consideration, and that's type 2 diabetes. And that also impacts their behavioral actions, right? So as you work through that, now we start to work in, so what's going on with them? Let's look at those identity descriptors, okay? The lifestyle, so the experience in work and in life, so the decision partners and influencers and their belief systems. So now we start to break that down. And so for that example, they could have a belief system that there's nothing they can do about the type 2 diabetes. They just have to keep taking these prescriptions and sort of face whatever ugly health situations arise, which can be very serious. That could be a belief system that they have in place, that they don't have the ability to take back some control, that they don't have the ability to create an impact by some of their own actions and behaviors. So that could be a belief system. And that's going to go into some of your client thinking, right? They could also have a belief system that it's just too much work. It's too hard. They don't have time to make these healthy meals, that it's going to take more time, right? And that they can't fit that into their already very busy schedule. So these are all the things that you start to dive into with the client thinking exercise. So I hope we've got some sparks going off and you're seeing that connection. All right. And if you missed those previous episodes, you can go back and watch them. All right. So now let's dive into step two of this exercise. It's to choose the specific client segment and map their why, which essentially I was just doing. Now I want you to remember that each type of client will potentially have a different why. So this is a completely different example. A single working mom may have a very different why as to pursuing career coaching than a woman who's just beginning her career. And maybe she wants to get off to a really rapid start and start climbing that corporate ladder and getting it right the first time, right? Versus somebody who's been in it and slogging through it and isn't making much progress and really wants to get that promotion and get the recognition that she so richly deserves, right? So they're coming at it from two very different perspectives. And if we go back to those examples that I was giving you, that would apply in this case as well. And so the whole idea here is that you're really mapping out those different whys. So in a B2B world, such an IT manager will look at a product or service from a very different lens than the CFO. And I think you guys can all sort of connect the dots there. But this is what I want to dive into. Let's think about the exercise I just did for B2B. And that person who's maybe the production manager, he's going to look at a solution that is mitigating the soft tissue in a different way. And the first thing he could be thinking, or she could be thinking, is, what the heck? This is going to take people off the production floor. It's going to impact our workflow, right? So you've got to get into their head, about how this is going to impact their situation. And they could look at it from the beginning from that negative side. And that's an objection that you need to be able to answer up front and address when you tap into that client thinking. Whereas someone in environmental health and safety is looking at it a different way. They want to keep people working in the best possible environment with good, healthy working conditions. And that includes taking care of those repetitive muscular injuries. So that perspective and where they're coming at it is very different. So you want to map those out, because certainly in a B2B world, you're often selling to more than one person. And by the way, in the B2C world, there's still people who are influencing that decision or who have a part in making that decision. So when we're thinking about the health coach who's selling to people who want healthy living or who need healthy eating habits and meal plans, they may well be selling to not just that individual woman, but to her partner and to her family members. They're all influencers or part of the decision-making process. So that's very important. And I want you to go back and repeat step 2 for every different type of client that you've identified. So in that B2B world, you're when you're selling to a room, you've got a whole bunch of people in that room, right? And so that also you need to do it if you have more than one product or service, So how does this product or service, who's that ideal client? I mean, we're going to get into that next week. I told you, but that's what you're going to want to do. So get those silos and get that all organized. Okay. Now, step 3, and I got 3 fingers. I barely had 3 fingers there. The focus on step 2 niche segments why. Okay. And I would just been doing this on the fly, that working mom who has type 2 diabetes, and how do you tap into, and then her belief system. And it's important whether you have one product or dozens, when you know their why, you can tailor your messages to highlight how your product or service benefits them so they can, so they can take back some control of their own health, so that they can avoid the pain of really some horrible medical and health considerations and complications, right? So they can live longer with more energy to participate in family activities, right? And then for those objections, you actually can answer the objection of that production manager up front and get that out of the way, right? So this takes us back to the advantages of psychographic segmentation, right? Because it helps you create client-centric products and communicate sales messages that resonate with the subconscious needs of your audience. All right. That's what the whole client thinking is about, because the psychographic data deals with personality traits that are formed over time, and it's relatively stable, unlike other types of market research data. And this means that you can create lasting sales and marketing strategies using psychographic variables. All right, so I want to give you some research sources that are publicly available and for free. And I'm going to look down at my notes here. Okay, so a real big one, the data census, the US Census Bureau, and that's datacensus.go. And so make sure you're going to the US Gov site for the US Census Bureau. They have all kinds of demographic data that's very useful. And in fact, there is a publication that the University of Virginia put together that's terrific, because it gives you all the links, what type of data is available, and how you can use that data. And that is the Guide to Publicly Available Demographic Data. So for your Google search, University of Virginia, Guide to Publicly Available Demographic Data. Okay, great resource. Bookmark it. You'll be using it. All right. Bureau of Labor Statistics. All right. So this is bls.gov. All right. Once again, a terrific resource. And I don't want you guys to get tied into just feeling like you're going to have to analyze this to death. No, but you do need to get some basic information. And you can do that in a couple of hours to help you as you're building out your client why, and you're going back to that. And for our next episode, as we go into ideal client avatar. Okay, another terrific resource is Pew, the Pew Research Organization, or the Pew Research Center. Let me get that right as I look down at my notes, the Pew Research Center, and that's Pew, P-E-W, research.org. So that's a great organization. Lots and lots of information, and they definitely have some psychographic data and analysis that you can pull there. All right. Next week, we will create your ideal client avatar. We're going to bring together what we've covered today: the client thinking, motivations, emotional appeal, and market segmentation. We're going to put it in this beautiful package, and we're going to tie it up in a bow. So I want you to go back and go through that exercise, step 1, step 2, and step 3. So just a reminder, step 1, I'm going to look here, is so that you define your market by identifying the different types of clients you have for your specific products or services. Okay, go through that for each one. And then step 2, choose a specific client segment and map their why. And step 3 is to focus on one of the step 2 niche segments and then really dive into that so that you can work through that client thinking and that client why. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. I think I just get my purpose is for you to get more clients. I'm Lynn Whitbeck, and I'm thrilled and grateful you joined me. If you have a question or would like to suggest a topic for discussion, you can email me at jointheconversation@petitetoqueen.com. And you can connect with me on our website to stay current on all of our insightful advice, our breakthrough advantages, and never miss an episode. You can sign up for our weekly wisdoms newsletter at petitetoqueen.com. And I will see you next week on Get More Clients.